Hello, it's me, Elizabeth Gomez.
And I'm Adrienne Gunn.
And this is Don't Ruin This For Me, a podcast where two middle-aged besties look back at the 80s and 90s pop culture that put us on a path toward total life disappointment. Because guess what, Adrienne? Life is not like the movies.
Wait a minute. I thought this podcast was called Wokefield.
It was, but you know what? We're all grown up now.
We are all grown up. You know what? When we started out, we were discussing the Sweet Valley High novels, and Wokefield was really a perfect name. But you know what? We got pretty bored of those dumb Wakefield twins.
The worst.
The worst. So we decided we might as well go ahead and fuck up all the other pop culture we loved as kids, and thus Don't Ruin This For Me was born.
Yeah, we're going in hard this season. We're holding on to our basic format, covering our formative favorite films and pop culture that we believe wronged us. This season, we have an amazing lineup of diverse guests and films, and we're going to also talk about the hottest pop culture moments happening right now. And speaking of, Adrienne,
yes,
what have you been into this week?
You guys, I'm really excited that we're adding like current pop culture stuff too, because I need more outlets to talk about things like Married at First Sight.
I know, we've been wanting to do this for so long, and we were trying to figure out how to get it like in.
Right. And you know what? You just do it.
Yes. You know what? Because it's our podcast.
Yeah, we do whatever the hell we want. So listen, I watched all of season 10 of Married at First Sight, which is a show where two people who have never met each other, seen each other ever, get married. And then there are like 19 episodes that are like an hour and a half each.
I can't believe that. You got me into Love is Blind, which I still haven't seen the most recent season of.
You know what? You need a sick day. You spend the whole day with Love is Blind. But anyway, so I watched all of Married at First Sight, and then I spent even more time on it, Elizabeth, because then I wrote about it in my brand new newsletter, Where the Fuck's My Happy Ending?
I know. I read it. I was excited. I feel like I got to know the characters very well on the show.
Yes.
I love your newsletter,
Thank
by the
you.
way. I think it looks really great.
Thank
you,
you,
Jessica Savage, for her logo.
Yes.
It looks good. So we both have newsletters now.
Tell them about your newsletter.
Mine is called Mixed Race Tape, where I write about all my random obsessions, and I complement it with a playlist.
I love this.
Because I can't make a mixtape anymore.
Well, a playlist is a mix.
It's kind of, right?
Yeah.
Like we have to work with what we have.
Yeah, I went on a date once, remember? And that guy sent me a playlist, and then we
Yes.
we really went through it to decide if he was like a trash person or not. We liked it.
I think actually you could not listen to it because you don't have Spotify.
That's true. No, I could listen to it.
And I had to tell you.
But there were a lot of ads. And, I'm not a super music head, so I was like, you listen to it first. And let me know if he's a tool. But he was cute, but I don't know where he is now. I don't remember his name.
I was going to say, and I think I liked the playlist.
Yeah.
I picked out some songs and some bands that I was like, these are decent bands. Guys.
Wait, let me ask you though. Are you you sent out your newsletter, and then are you logging into Spotify to see who's listening to your playlist?
I will tell you that I have gotten subscribers from Spotify.
To the newsletter.
Yeah, isn't that weird?
It's a reverse thing.
Yeah.
Your music picks are that hot. Wow.
No, I just think that people are like, what's this about? And then they click on it. They're just weird, curious people like me.
Right.
Yeah, it's a small percentage, like 4%.
Right,
it's like really tiny.
No, I love that though.
But anyways, it's really fun. I love creating soundtracks in my brain.
Yeah.
I probably have a soundtrack going on for us right now.
Wow.
I wish we had so much money we could just buy rights to songs.
You know what? Even RuPaul doesn't buy the rights to very many songs. Just that last week they were doing another Taylor Dayne lip sync.
Oh my God.
And I was like, listen, I love the Taylor Dayne song. I love that Ru loves it, but we've seen it at least 3 times.
I mean,
and they've got that World of Wonder money.
He loves an old school disco, man. He loves it.
Okay, listen, everybody, though, subscribe to our newsletters. I know a lot of people who are not writers are like, what's a newsletter? What is a Substack? And I get it. So you can go to substack.com and search for either of us. It'll come up. I'm going to also put the link in our Instagram app, and you're going to love it. You're going to love our newsletters. Yes. It's just more Elizabeth, more Adrienne.
And we're not changing any of our feeds. We're just changing the titles of everything.
Yeah.
Because, life is hard.
Well, I did change the name on Instagram from Wokefield to Don't Ruin This for Me. But if you're already subscribed to us, it's still, you're there.
That's what I'm saying.
We've got it.
All right. What have I been obsessed with this week?
Yeah,
Let's talk about that. Pedro Pascal. Have you been watching my Instagram stories?
You and every single person on the planet is obsessed.
Yes, he's our internet daddy.
Yeah.
Do you pay any attention to him at all?
Well, obviously, I saw him on Game of Thrones.
Yes.
He was a total star there.
Oh, yeah. And then he had his eyes popped out at the end.
It was tough.
It was
tough. We need Kim here to recount the exact details. I think he was fighting the mountain, but she's going to be like, that's wrong.
Yeah. Well, he's also played the Mandalorian, which is where you don't see his face at all. So I'm not really that interested in watching
who gives a shit about that if he's wearing a mask?
Yes. I discovered a moment where peak all of my pop culture loves came into one moment.
Tell me.
Yeah, so I found out that Pedro Pascal did an episode of Special Victims Unit. Sorry.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Yes. I had Olivia. I had Stabler. I got Pedro. It was amazing. So if any of you guys wonder this about me, I love true crime. I think I've mentioned this before in previous seasons.
Tough look.
And I am super, super hot for SVU. So I'm always watching it. I've watched it several times, all 25 seasons, and I will continue to do that.
Yeah, I believe that. I mean, when we rode our bikes across Ohio, the first thing she did at every hotel room was turn on to TBS to find the Special Victims Unit. They play it 24/7.
They play
in the mornings, at night.
Yes.
It's always there waiting for you.
Yes.
Well, I haven't started The Last of Us yet. Do I need to?
I do think you need to. Though you're not a big person for horror films and zombies and things like that. Although you did say you watched The Walking Dead.
I did watch. I like story, right?
Yes.
So I don't like tons of horror that's just about scaring me and gore. But it sounds like this show has a lot of story.
It does have a lot of story, and they do a lot of stories about the sub characters that are in the video game, which makes it. It gives them a lot of freedom to create these other worlds within this one world.
Yeah.
So I think it's very cool, and Pedro's there, and so I just think yes.
Okay, I'll do it. Oh, the last thing I want to tell you about before we really dig into today's episode is, guess what I saw?
What?
Cocaine Bear.
Oh, I was going to ask you about that. How was it?
I took my mother.
Yes.
And I took my son. He is almost 14, right? Mima's 74, right? So we had the whole gamut of experience at Cocaine Bear. When we left, my mom was like, that was stupider than I thought it was going to be. I was like, it's literally called Cocaine Bear. What did you think was going to happen? We had a great time, though. Overall, it's very silly. I loved all the sort of 80s retroness of it all. So it's a recommend.
And it's based on a true story.
Yes, but in the true story, just so people know, the bear eats the cocaine and dies. Immediately. Within 30 minutes, the bear is dead.
Wait, so in the movie, it's the cocaine bear has a whole personality? Because that's really exciting.
100%. And in the movie, there'll be times where cocaine explodes in the forest and the bear's just in the sky, slurping them up with his nose. The bear is instantly addicted to cocaine as well. That's part of the oomph of moving the story forward.
Yeah, I definitely feel like that could be me. If I was the cocaine bear, I would just
listen.
Be
if there was cocaine exploded in this room right now, you would be the one.
And the show would be so good. Don't you think the show would be great?
It'd be faster. You know who else is in that movie is Margot Martindale, a real scene stealer. She was great.
I don't know if I can remember who she is.
You know who she is. She's in everything.
All right. Well, give me an example. Well, see, you can't remember.
Let's move forward.
We're just old, middle-aged ladies, guys.
Okay.
Middle-aged ladies.
But I'm really excited about this season.
Yes.
And I'm really excited. I'm the one that was this is what we're starting with, no matter what.
Yes, you were very dedicated to the idea.
Yes, because this has been a through line between, in our friendship, Elizabeth talks about this all the time, and we've never really dug into it. And the it of it all is Pamela Anderson.
Yeah! I actually was very hesitant about trying to dig into this whole topic, but after watching Pamela, A Love Story, I feel like I'm ready.
Yeah,
I feel
we
ready
have
and prepared.
to.
Yes.
Well, and there's been a lot of Pamela content, right? There's the Pam and Tommy show on Hulu, which we both watched. There's Pamela, A Love Story, the Netflix documentary. And she also has a book, which I believe is Love Pamela.
Correct.
I saw it at Half Price Books yesterday.
Oh, it's already on half price?
Well,
I
no,
guess
they
it's a
just
used
had it
bookstore,
there. Just
yeah.
had it there. They have like a small section of new books.
You know, I was thinking about this as I was watching the documentary. I was like, oh, I wonder, like, this completely kind of makes sense about how much I love and adore you. I'm like, yes, because I was like, this chick, I was like, this chick is beautiful. You know, she is smart. You know, well, Pamela.
I was like, who are we talking about?
I was like,
me or Pamela.
I was like, we'll talk about Pamela's intelligence a little bit. But I was like, you know, Adrian's beautiful. I mean, I think the first time I've said this on the podcast before, is that when I first met you, I was like, wow, she's stunning. She's blonde. She's got a nice figure. You know, she has a son. Yeah.
I can't believe I haven't been snatched off the market with that fucking lead-in.
And also, you're like a hopeless romantic. And I think that that's a very interesting thing that we're going to get into. So we're going to dig in a little bit about my surface feelings and your very deep feelings.
Okay, sure. I mean, you know, yes, I am a hopeless romantic, but I hide it much better than Pamela. Yeah. And I don't allow it to make all my choices.
Yes, and you also have tapped into your rage as a woman, which I don't think that Pamela has. So we start the documentary.
Yeah.
It's super cute. There's Pamela. She's wearing all white, of course, living in Ladysmith, Vancouver. Right, Vancouver Island, maybe.
Vancouver, yes, they call it, you know, the island, because she talks about the mainland. So
yes.
It's like a thing.
And then she's driving a John Deere, because I kept saying this is my favorite part of the show, is she's driving a John Deere, like a John Deere tractor, and wearing high heel hunter boots.
Yes, and like a white see-through nightgown. Yes. And she's just like fucking mowing the yard.
Yes, and a big hat, and she's just like no makeup. She's just beautiful. And then she goes into they go into opening up with some home video of everyone, which is really
Pamela
really fun
growing
to watch.
up.
Yep. And the best one was Tommy coming out to their old love pad on a horse in a shining armor of like knights, and he's just like, Pam, will you marry me? And then I thought, how could she say no?
They were already married. But listen, let's get into the Tommy of it all after we.
Yes.
So Pamela's grown up in Ladysmith, Vancouver. Her parents are fighting all the time. Her dad's an alcoholic. Yep. Things are not great. She gets molested by a babysitter for like years.
For years. And then
many years.
She talks about how she tried to protect her brother from it and how she felt very ashamed of it.
Yes.
Which, of course, she's a child.
Yes.
You know, and then there's another part where she admits about being raped at 12.
Yes.
So she's,
by a 25-year-old,
I
by
know,
the way.
who was giving her a quote-unquote massage.
Oof.
Disgusting.
Ooh, first,
Disgusting.
he let in with backgammon. Yes. I mean, what the fuck? You'd think you could trust that. We're playing backgammon. Things took a real turn.
Yes, it was. I mean, it's so dark. And then
Yes.
she grows up and somehow maintains to keep this like very innocent, sweet like vibe about her.
Yes.
And goes out to play a hockey game wearing a Labatt's blue shirt with her and her friends.
Listen, when this happened, I texted you and I was like, can you even conceptualize what it would be to be so beautiful that you're in a hockey stadium
In Canada.
In Canada, thousands of people in this stadium, and somehow they find you and they're like, they put you on the Jumbotron, they pull you down to the hockey stage, and next thing you know, you're a Labatt's model. All you did was try to go to a hockey game.
Yeah, wearing like a cute little t-shirt. I want to say this too, is that the Pamela Anderson we see as a Labatt's girl is definitely different than the Pamela we know as the icon.
Well, I mean, she's very young.
Yes, and gorgeous.
Yes.
Like she never needed those tits.
I mean,
never.
Listen, because next thing you know, she goes to LA to be in Playboy, and they show her tits on the documentary, and like they were great. I was like, if these were her pre-tits, what was going on?
I know, and she's so sweet during that whole thing. Because this is, I think, very important. And I think we should talk about it later. Which is, she keeps all these journals for years and years and years. I also had kept journals for years, from 5th grade till I graduated high school. But the moment I left home, my mom threw them all away.
Of course she did.
So
she was like, burn the evidence. Burn the fucking evidence.
This chick's out. I hate her. Let's go.
She's like, nobody needs to look back on this.
I was like, where's all the trophies I had for public speaking? And she's just like, I don't know what you're talking about. Yeah. Do you even live here? Right. Anyways, so all of this is like journaled. So we get to go back and like listen to her thoughts at the real time of what she was doing. And so when she's at the Playboy Mansion, she's even talking about like how much everyone else is so much better looking than she is. Which is mind blowing.
Yes.
Because she's Pamela Anderson.
You know, I think one thing in the whole thing that I found very interesting. So, like, in the present day, Pamela is literally in this, like, white flowy nightgown and a robe. She has no makeup on. It looks as if she's not brushed her hair. She's still rocking the tiny eyebrows, which worked better as a younger woman, I'll just say.
I don't know if they're going to come back, though, dude.
Yeah.
I don't know if they can.
But literally, she does all her interviews, no makeup, no hair, like, in this robe. And a lot of the ways she, like, talks about her own beauty or, like, whatever is, like, I don't even know how to describe it. It's like very detached. Like she does not talk about it like as if she was like, oh, I'm so hot. She doesn't talk about it as like, I need to preserve my hotness. Like it is a very like opposite experience of what you see of like any other sort of female star. Like who else do you know that's going to be like, I'm going to do this with no makeup on?
Yeah, I thought that was really interesting too. And I think like even there's a point where her mom makes a comment about her body. She's just talking about like, oh, why are you wearing this like loose nightgown?
Yeah.
And Pamela very everyday girlish says, well, you know, it's just different now. My body's different now. And like kind of laughing about having a silhouette that's thinner. And I thought that was so like, I was like, this is how we do talk, like normal people talk to each other.
Yes. And I would just like to say, no, it's not. I mean, I saw her walking down the farm and she's in this see-through nightgown. She had this like black thong on. I texted Elizabeth. I was like, in this entire movie, she has a great ass.
She does.
It's like unbelievable.
It still holds up in her 50s, man. It's awesome. Then we move into basically after her Playboy career, she ends up traveling a lot. And
she gets on Baywatch.
She ends up going to Cancun to do something, and she gets a phone call from a rock star,
Tommy Lee,
and
he's going to follow her there.
Yeah, so they had met at a club, and then he thought that she was paying attention to him specifically. She wasn't, but of course,
doesn't matter.
Men
doesn't matter.
And so he follows her there. He ends up marrying her 4 days later, dude,
in a bikini, in her white bikini.
Yes, and she I think pulled somebody off like from staff to be her bridesmaid, and she's just crazy about him. And then they move into lots of clips about him and her marriage, which we'll get into again later. They have 2 kids, the sex tape, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
Then we go through all of her other marriages.
I mean, she's been married 5 times. 5 times. Most recently in like 2021 and now divorced in 2022.
Yes, it's awful. I feel I feel really, really bad for her at this point. You know, they're talking about her marriages and how she sees love, which again we'll talk to in greater depth. And then eventually we go into like who is Pamela today?
Right.
And her sons seem to adore her.
They really do.
They love everything about her. They think that she was they're not wrong. She was very, very screwed when it came to like her career.
Right. I can't remember if I told you that I have some experience with Brandon Lee.
No.
Oh, yeah, because I obviously watched Hills, Our New Beginnings, which he was on.
I'm like, I don't even know that show.
Yes, you do. The Hills.
Yes.
It was like old school. And then they did like My New Beginnings. And it had like Brody Jenner and Brandon Lee.
What?
And yes.
Also, don't you think Brandon Lee looks just like Tommy?
Sure.
It's very hot.
Yeah, he's cute. Yeah. Anyway, the boys seem to adore their mom. She gets to go play Roxy on Broadway.
Yes.
Which was adorable. She got good reviews, which I was glad for her.
Yeah, and she talks a lot about the book that she wrote and her process of writing, which is something I think you could talk about too. It's your book, process of writing, and how hard it can be.
Glad Pam and I have that in common.
I'm telling you are my Pam.
Oh, God.
No, and she just seems really great. And at the end of the documentary, I end up feeling very sad for her.
Yeah. I
feel very conflicted about like where she ended up after all of this huge life that I literally witnessed from when I was a teenager till today. I don't know what you thought when they wrapped it up. It was
I mean, all I'm thinking right now is did you even say why you were obsessed with this girl?
Yes. I haven't. I don't know if I said it yet.
Not really. Let's start there because you're already talking about being a teenager. So,
yes.
What is Pamela Anderson to you?
Pamela Anderson to me is exactly what I should have looked like as an American girl. That is what I believe. That's what I believe. To all my listeners who don't know this, I would spend every single cent I have to look like her. But as a teenager, I was like this brown-haired, frizzy, chubby, like little half Asian, half Puerto Rican kid that like people were never fully sure what my background was and never really sure about how to approach me. But when I saw Pamela Anderson, I was like, this is America. This is what Americans look like, you know? This is what she's never going to have to answer these questions, and everyone's going to always adore her, and she's beautiful and blonde and never has to wear a lick of makeup. I mean, she was just, to me, the perfect idea of what I think my mother must have even thought when she came to America. This is what all the girls would look like. Plot twist, they don't.
No, and I mean, like, it's not like you chose Brooke Shields. I mean, you chose, like, you know, and listen, there's Pam and then there's, like, Pam the character. So I'm talking about Pam the character. I mean, you really chose, like, a slutty sort of, like, expression.
Yeah, but not when she was on Baywatch. I mean, she was in play. Well, I'm going to say this.
My face is like,
I know.
No.
She was definitely, I wouldn't say that her Baywatch character was slutty as much as she was like this, like, very, like, wide-eyed, naive, young beach lifeguard.
Slutty isn't the right word. Because it's definitely not the right word. It's like over-sexualized.
Yes.
You know, it's like, it's to an extreme. I mean, like, she had her swimsuit cut to, like, you know, the tops of her nipples. They have her running. Her tits are flying. You know, the swimsuit legs are, like, cut to the armpit.
That was the look back then.
Listen, that is the most unflattering. It looks fine for her, but anytime I put on a high-cut swimsuit, I'm like, what is happening
I'm telling you, do you remember the Van Halen videos? All the girls wore their...
I mean, you do.
Yes, of course I do. Are you kidding? That was my dream. I was like, this is what I'm going to grow up to do. I'm going to be a video vixen.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Again, that's really sexualized.
Yeah. I mean, but I think at that time in the 80s, you know, this is what we talk about all the time when it comes to some of our favorite films. It's like how women were treated.
Yeah.
And you had power. In my eyes, as a child, I was like, you have power if you're sexy. Mm-hmm. And I don't know that has... it's evolved in a different way, but I don't know if that really served for Pamela, which I think makes her a little bit more tragic in some ways, because I don't know if she had grown up and her career had been moved just a decade later, how different it would look like than it does now.
I don't even know if she could do it the same way, because the moment where she was so popular, like the late 90s, early 2000s, was like a very specific moment of, like, media, like, taking women, doing whatever the fuck they want with them to monetize it, to, like, make money, to tear them down. I mean, and that's, you know, there's not that much difference between Britney Spears and Pamela Anderson, like, in terms of their stories. They were both really wronged by, like, a slew of men.
Yes.
And then she keeps getting married.
I also thought it was really hard, like, when you bring up Britney and Pam, the one thing with Britney was that they even sexualized her as a kid.
Yes.
As a child.
But Pam was also a child. Isn't she like 18 when she's on Playboy?
I think she's like 19 or 20. I think she's moving.
Still very young.
She's very young. But she's not like Britney Spears' 14, 15-year-old, which was like really gross.
Yes. And nobody said it was gross, by the way.
No, never. No. And I think the thing with Pamela was that she was also, so I actually didn't follow a lot of her work. Mm-hmm. I fell in love with her love story because I thought that was her and Tommy.
Yeah, let's get to that.
Yes, that was like my favorite love story ever. But then before we get into that, I was going to say that she would do all these interviews, and watching her on late night television, she was just so sweet and kind. And I wasn't surprised to find that out with her in the documentary. And I thought the one thing the documentary gave me was a little bit more sincerity. Like there wasn't as much like uncovering, like trying to cover up some of these painful things. I think in the documentary there's a clip where Matt Lauer, this really did not age well.
Matt Lauer. And I feel like we've seen clips of him being creepy and other things recently too. But go ahead.
And he's talking to her and he like gestures with his two hands like he's holding her boobs, and she actually says something about it.
Yeah.
It was so gross. But I remembered watching those clips, like how many times I watched that over and over again, like just people talking about her tits the whole time.
Well, her tits were really obscene. I mean, like she got them really, really big. And, you know, again, it's like you think about like, okay, well, maybe the standards are like, that's not okay to talk about. Except we talk about the Kardashians' asses constantly.
All the time.
You know, they got them really, really big. I think the difference is like Pamela actually was like offended, and the Kardashians like have monetized it.
Well, I think Pamela changed a lot of that for people.
For
the
sure.
Sex tapes and how they get released, and like being a sexy woman. I mean, let's talk a little bit about her body and her trauma, right? Like, I don't think I knew this as a kid, and I definitely think that a lot of her loving bad boys was like a thing that I also very much enjoyed. But I think that when she talks about her abuse and finding empowerment and then having it taken away from her. It's really heavy. I think that was a very heavy moment. I don't know what your thoughts were on that.
Okay, so you're meaning she found empowerment by being in Playboy and doing what she wanted, and then she had it taken away from her when the sex tape was stolen. So I don't think we said this. Basically, Pam, if you don't know, Pam and Tommy were having construction done on their house. They had their sex tape and like Tommy's guns and her wedding bikini in a giant safe.
Yep.
One of the contractors was like, Tommy didn't pay me, so he stole this safe, and then he found the sex tape, and then he like found people to distribute it, and then it was also like at the beginning of the internet, so it was like this whole confluence of things that like Pam and Tommy couldn't stop it.
Yeah, and it was all of this happened super fast because they get married 4 days after they meet, right? And then they have a kid within a year.
Yeah.
Well, they have a miscarriage within a year. Then they have their son. Then the safe gets stolen. Then the tape scandal happens. This all happens within 2 years, which is wild.
Yeah.
But, she's talking about like how all this abuse, like physical abuse has happened to her and in the worst ways possible. And then she's also doing Playboy where she also finds empowerment in being sexy and flirty and fun. And when this video comes out, all of that gets taken away from her. All of her power just like makes her melt down. And I feel like, I guess like this will go into our whole Tommy and Pam conversation, but to watch someone just crumble like that, like it's so gross. I just don't know that I understand what the motivation with that was, except money.
Yeah. I mean, money, and I think also dominance, right? Because it was all men who did it. So women are not going to fucking steal your sex tape. I mean, listen, my thing I keep coming back to with Pam is like, I don't understand why she keeps like searching out men, trusting men. Like there's a long history of men being awful to her. And when she is like at court, like giving a deposition because they're trying to get this tape stopped, she's been offered money for it. She's refused it. Like she just like wants the tape like not on the internet, and all the people giving her the deposition are men, and they're all awful to her, and she's like, I don't understand why these grown men hate me. And I was like, girl, this is like the crux of it though, right? Like she was the man that everybody, or the woman that everybody wanted and they can't have, and like all the morals of that time were so fucked up. It was like totally fine to be awful to women. I mean, it still is, but like, I think people try to hide it a little better.
I mean, it's so hard to watch. I think like, when she's talking about why do these grown men hate me, it does make you think a lot about how actually things have changed since then. Like she had the baby and then she's like walking around and the paparazzis are like, it's her first night out after having the baby. And everyone's like, where's your baby? Where's your baby?
Yeah.
Nowadays it's like we encourage women to go out and,
I don't think it's changed that much, to be honest.
Really?
No, I think like women judge each other about their parenting, and like then men reinforce these certain things. Because I think a lot of it is like really subconscious, like when I had my son, like all of a sudden my ex-husband was kind of like, are you going to stay home? And I was like, what the fuck are you talking about? You've known me for like a decade. Like that was like, that's not my vibe. It's never been my vibe. Like I'm going to work. And, he was shocked. And I was just like, okay, so like all this stuff is so deeply ingrained that it just like comes up and people don't even think about it.
Yeah. I didn't think about it that way, but I definitely thought like it's another point for men to like have control over this woman,
100%.
Like, let me just judge you. Let me masturbate.
Yes.
While looking at you.
Yes.
And absolutely judge you for your decisions when you decide to dress up and go out after you've had a baby. Like some kind of like weird, like mothers can no longer be sexy kind of emotion. When she's talking about these grown men and she's asking about how much she hates, like, why do they hate me so much? Part of me was also like, why do you keep liking them? They're awful to you.
Yes.
And like all of our marriages didn't sound great, even.
Yes, there was abuse in all of them.
Yes. So there was Tommy who ends up going to jail for a little bit. And then I don't know.
For abusing her.
Right. For abusing
her. While
her.
she's holding her 8-week baby.
I can't remember why her and Kid Rock broke up, but she says in the documentary that it's just not as fiery and flamey, which makes it really difficult to talk about because then you're thinking, as she had referred to before, her parents had like a very fiery physical relationship that she now has do we think like she's now settling that that's kind of the peak of having a great relationship?
Yes, that is what she thinks.
Yeah.
I mean, literally, her relationship with Tommy is insane. Like, you watch all the videos, and like, he's clearly fucking nuts, like on drugs and wild, and like, you know, just like willing to do anything, up for anything, right? Like, he's fucking wild, and she loves it. As you said, like, her parents had this crazy relationship, but there's like, her romanticness is like, it's very deep and pure, and like, she would be the person who loves the horse and the knight's outfit, right? But it's also chaos. She sees chaos as like, you know, that's actually love. That's being in love.
I mean, it's super relatable for me, which, you know, because I think maybe when I was watching this documentary, I was like, is this why I am the way I am?
Yes. Let's tell us. Tell us.
So like, you know, one of my ex-husband, when I met him, you know, he lived in California, I lived in Chicago. And I left knowing that I was going to change my life by moving to Chicago. I was like, I can't keep doing this life that I have, which is partying and being crazy and sleeping with everyone. And I'm going to go to Chicago and straighten my shit out. And then a month later, I get a note from him or a phone call from him. And he's like, I'm going to sell everything and come to Chicago to be with you. And at the time, I was like, that's crazy. I don't want that. And still my mouth said, yes, I will be here. Like, what is wrong with me?
Well, wait, did you take it as being like a really romantic like gesture?
Yes, when it's somebody, he only owned, I think we'd known each other for maybe 2 months, maybe. And for him to be like, I'm going to sell all of my things. And then I'm going to get on this Greyhound bus from Los Angeles to Chicago to be with you.
Wow, not even a plane.
Right? He's like, to be with you. Like, you're so special. And I remember feeling like, this is too much. This is crazy. Something's not right. And still I'm like, okay, I can't promise you we'll be together, but might as well just come on out.
Right.
And then, you know, once he even got here, like during his transit, I get a letter from his ex-girlfriend who's like, I'm his baby mama, and he's actually selling all my, you know, she's like, yes, she's like, he sold all of our shit so he could come stay with you and left me in the sun behind. You guys should see Christine's face.
And what did you do with that letter?
I was like,
you're like, sorry, you're just not as special as me, bitch.
I think I did what most women tend to do of a certain age. You just you ask the guy about it. He gives you a story.
Yeah.
You know, and his story is like that. It's not, she's obsessed with him. She's like possessive.
Always.
And I also think that was another narrative we heard a lot in the 80s and 90s is like jealous women.
Crazy women.
Yes.
She's crazy.
Yeah. And never like, well, maybe that woman actually has some legitimate stories.
Yes. I mean, not to bring this back to Married at First Sight, but on that show, these women, Taylor and I are watching it, my other friend, and these women are like 25, young, and the men act crazy, and then the women reflect their behavior back to them in like perfectly reasonable voices and tones, and then the men and these weird expert therapists all gaslight the women and are like, no, you're crazy. Like, he wouldn't hurt this much if he didn't love you.
I know. It's so gross. And so, you know, when he got here, even we had been, maybe it had been a month, and we were walking through downtown. Somehow we were passing City Hall, and he was like, blah, 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 you know, you would never marry me, which, by the way, was Pamela said. We'll get to that. But he was like, you wouldn't marry me. And I was like, of course I'd marry you. And he was like, no, no, you wouldn't. And I was like, yes, I would. And
how old are you right now?
At this point, I'm probably 22, 21.
Oh, okay.
I'm a baby.
Yeah, you are.
And he's like, well, let's go. And so we went to City Hall. We got a license. I sat on it for a month. And then one day he came home from work and he was like, Elizabeth, call your mom. We're getting married in the morning. And I did.
Wait, did you think that was sexy? Like,
I think,
did he really like sort of order you and you were like, oh, okay?
He definitely ordered me, and I think that I did think it was sexy, and I think I felt very conflicted about it. Because we were on the train the next morning on the Blue Line going to City Hall, and I was sitting down and he was standing up like over me a little bit, and he's like, you don't look like you want to get married. And I was like, I do.
What are you wearing?
At the time, I'm wearing like a
Yeah,
little
for your wedding.
Oh yeah, like a little cardigan and like this small, tight, short dress, which is totally another Pamela move.
Yeah, I was gonna say I've never
covering
seen
my shoulders.
I've never seen any photos from this wedding.
Yeah, I don't know if I have any actually. Then we went to Ronnie's Steakhouse to celebrate.
Was it just the two of you?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Oh no, he at the time had a job, so he so one time he had one of his coworkers come to watch and witness it.
Okay.
Because he thought we needed one, but it was very much a Simpsons wedding. Like, Elizabeth, do you? Like a wink and a nod, and then Jeff, do you? Blah. Oops, sorry, I just said my ex-husband's name, but there you go.
Wow.
Now you guys know.
Slander.
But I think you have never been attracted to a bad boy, which is wild to me.
And this is again why. So Elizabeth and I also off pod had a little bit of a text exchange about whether or not Pamela was an Enneagram 7 as Elizabeth is, because I would say about both of them, their self-preservation vibes are a little low. Like my self-preservation vibes are a little high. No, I have no interest. No.
Yeah, no. I feel like though before I had kids, my self-preservation was never about self-preservation. I never had this feeling of like I need to be protected. But
right,
I think
neither does Pamela.
Yeah. Well, I think they felt separate. They just felt like this is a relationship, and then whatever I do on my own is what I do on my own.
Yes.
But you've never. Aside from your self-preservation, you've never like even on television was like this bad boy on TV, super hot.
Not really. Sometimes I like a taciturn man, a little stern, that like...
You like a daddy.
Well, that perhaps like I'm the only one who can make him smile.
Oh.
That kind of situation. Yeah. So yes, I am also a romantic, but no, I listen, my parents drove it into me very young. Like my mom was an alcoholic and then she went to AA and it was like, you could be an alcoholic. It was like this like fucking huge deal. And at the same time, it was like the peak of like date raping. Everybody was getting liquid G'd and like, so like I was the person in college who was like, had one Bud Light and like monitored my friends, like I was very like, don't get raped, don't get like drugged, don't get caught up with like an idiot that is going to hurt you. So I was like very cautious. I would say I still am. You and I will walk into a bar and you're like chatting up, Tommy Lee of Rockford, Illinois. And I'm like, ugh, I've moved on. I don't even want him to say anything to me. Like I've already moved to the end of the bar.
Yeah, no, you're definitely like, I don't want, I think one time you sent me a text from DC where you're like, I'm sitting at a bar and a man has approached me. I do not want to talk to men.
No, well, listen, I think I have like, I really try to keep the chaos out of my life as much as possible, and a bad boy doesn't turn me on. I want to feel safe. Sorry. Like, ugh.
Well, for Pamela's decisions after Tommy and then she marries Kid Rock, Rick Solomon is the next person.
Right.
And there's a great quote from the documentary where she's like, I found a crack pipe in the Christmas tree. Yeah. And he said it wasn't his, but it couldn't be mine.
Right. She finds his crack pipe in the Christmas tree. And then she divorces him and remarries him again later.
Yeah. After he's sober though, Adrienne.
Well,
everyone deserves a second chance.
I don't know. And then she marries a contractor that just walks onto her property and she's like, you know what? Fuck it.
Yes.
A civilian.
Well, she came out of COVID. It was a hard time for everyone. But back to Rick Solomon.
Yeah.
He's also the guy who, by the way, was married to Shannon Doherty, another 90s icon, right? Yeah. And then he, I think, was in the sex tape of Paris Hilton when it got released.
Oof.
Yes.
Probably.
And so he ended up, unlike Pam, which I think is ironic, is that he ends up getting the rights for the sex tape and then making money off the sex tape. So Pam, what are you doing?
Well, she was the first one. She doesn't know.
I know. Let's talk about, have you ever made a sex tape?
No. I don't even have to ask you. I'm sure that you have.
No, what?
I'm sure there are naked photos of you places.
There might be, but I don't. Yeah. But I think that they're probably like.
What about a reel? You made a sex reel?
No, for sure not.
And it's just like a little clip.
I would think that if I have any naked photos, they're probably on paper, like the old photo paper.
Yeah. I do know photo paper.
Right?
Yes, I will say. I think I was born in 1980. I graduated high school in 1998. I graduated college in 2002. So I got a cell phone in 2001, and it was like a Nokia brick, right? Like I didn't have access to what the children have now, and I am 100% sure if I did, that total bad, like, yes, I would have done. I can think of some of my actions in college that I'm like horrified about. I love that there was no technology to like, blast that across the internet. I mean, I went to spring break in Panama City, Elizabeth.
I know. We were supposed to have a birthday party this year, all based on that.
Because that shit is fucking trashy.
Yeah. I remember that was also a big thing, like the spring break videos on television at the time.
Oh, the tits, Girls Gone Wild.
Yeah, Girls Gone Wild. That was nuts.
It was a really misogynistic time.
Yes.
And especially in the fact that no one was talking about the fact that any of these things were misogynistic.
Right.
To imagine that your sex tape could be stolen from your house, literally stolen property, and then monetized and spread across the internet, and nobody knows what the internet is. Like that, I think they did a better job of really playing out in the Pam and Tommy Hulu show. Yeah. Like, I mean, I grew up in all of this, and I still was like, holy shit, this is what it was. That and like, because we're so
dial up.
We're just so used to the internet today, right? But like, if you look at how this happened, it was just like a perfect storm of like the internet meets, porn and terrible people.
Well, and she talks about that because she's like, I didn't even really know how far that reached. She's
right. No one knew.
I think the sadder part about the whole thing too is that this is before people really made sex tapes public on purpose, right? Because this guy actually stole the safe not knowing that there was a sex tape, allegedly. Yeah. And the one thing I feel so sad about Pamela in this situation is that she's doing this thing for her husband, with her husband as two private citizens who just want to be together and are wild about each other. And now it's like exploited into like this really dirty, nasty kind of world.
Yeah.
Not that sexuality is like nasty, but the fact that like she didn't consent to any of it.
Yes, I mean, it's awful. And basically the lawyers are like, well, you took your clothes off for Playboy, so like this is all fair game. I mean, it's fucked up. It's like, you're a slut because we saw a picture of you naked, and this is what sluts get. I mean, it's very like patriarchal and upsetting. But again, let's talk about the fact that men fuck her over and over and over again. And still she wants to date men. So there's Tommy, who is wild, and she's wild with, but he ends up abusing her and going literally to jail for like 6 months. And they have to break up because she has to protect her tiny children. Listen, Pamela, I hear you on this. No, they never get back together.
No, they did get back together for a little bit.
Oh, really? In the documentary?
They break up. He goes to jail. Yeah. They try to make it work again. Oh, okay. I don't think that they remarried a second time, but they got back together for a little while, and then it just like fell apart.
Right.
Because he's probably like, why'd you send me to jail? And she did the right thing and was like, dude, you hit me. Like,
right. So, okay, so she's got Tommy, and then at the same time, they have the sex tape stolen from them by men, then like mass produced by men, put across the internet. So if that wasn't a violation enough, then she also gets to go through the legal proceedings where the men are fucking awful to her. Then she marries Kid Rock. She marries Rick Solomon. They're drug people. Then she marries a soccer player who crushes her hand.
Yeah, no. So that she didn't marry him, but she
him?
went out with him, and she was, wow. Like, I don't know what it is about men wanting to like just break anything that's beautiful.
Well, and that's the thing. Like, there's everyone she dates, all the stories about the men in her life are very abusive. Her dad was an alcoholic, was abusive to her mother. She was raped in her childhood. I mean, like, but she somehow, over and over again, like picks herself up and like believes in love. And I would say the end of this movie is like her big sort of thinking about love is that if she can't be with Tommy, then she just needs to be alone, because Tommy is like her truest love.
And the father of her children.
It's like, Pam, honey, have you had any therapy at all? Right. At all. I mean, listen, I love her, but like I said, I don't know. I guess I'm trying to say is I've had some experiences with men, and they really turned me off men. It's like a fool me once kind of situation.
I mean, I definitely like, this is hard. I would say this is that, I can't speak about Pam's violations with men. And, but I've always complained about my whole life with men because I haven't had that. I've had a ton of people I've slept with, but I've never like had that many male relationships, like romantic. But the first person I meet who's my dad just abandons us, right?
Yeah, not great.
Not great. Then the next person that I think is significant in my like romantic life is that I meet this kid. He takes my virginity. The next day he starts dating some other chick. He's just basically like, screw you, you're disgusting and I hate you. And no one should ever know that we slept together. Right. And then my next one is like my abuser, the guy who like raped me and like and hit me repeatedly. And then my next one is my ex-husband who is it's all a mess, right? And still I end up getting remarried.
You and Pam, the fucking flame cannot be extinguished.
I mean, the difference, I think, is that I can look back now and go, these people are abusive and terrible, and this is not the place I should be. I'm not sure if Pam understands that line yet. Like, I think she still struggles with it.
I'm not sure either. And I think it's really interesting because her sons seem to adore her. So, again, more men. I mean, they're full-grown men now. And I'm trying to remember if On the Hills, I mean, I think On the Hills, New Beginnings, Brandon Lee was kind of a drunk. I mean, obviously he's got that Tommy Lee in him. But, I'm raising what will one day be a man. And I do think it is conflicting that, like, my opinion on men can be pretty low. And I don't even know if it's like men's fault per se, but like even like what were these men thinking when they were treating her this way about her sex tape that had been stolen? Right. I mean, it's like the morality of whether it was fine for someone to monetize this is very clear, right? Like it was stolen from her, but these men were just like, well, no, we own anything that a woman has. And if she's shown us our tits, then we get to see her pussy too, and we get to see her do this. And you know what I mean? Like, I think men have been like raised to have these beliefs.
Yeah, it goes back to the whole like, what were you wearing when you were raped?
Right. Exactly. And like, so how was Pam raising her kids, or like, how am I raising my kid? Like, it's difficult. It's not easy.
I wouldn't think so. And I think that like trying to raise a male who has to like walk this line of like still these kind of patriarchal Christian based thinking, and then having to have a mother who's very like liberal and like this is not the way to treat a woman is hard. But it seems like Pamela's sons are very empathetic to her whole story, and that they really admire their mom for being even stupidly in love all the time.
Yeah, I think that's probably true. Tommy's been married a bunch of times since he married Pam, isn't he?
Yeah, now he's married Brittany Furlan.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, the boys talk a little bit about being young and feeling like everyone knew things about their family, like dark secrets about their family, or like if someone said something about their mom at school that they were immediately like ready to like knock people out. But I think, Pam is just like such a encapsulation of like how women have been treated, but in this like super heightened way, right? Because we're all supposed, like you started with, we're all supposed to look like fucking Pam, right? But then then people abuse her constantly. But then she also doesn't seem to totally get, like, but she does get it. Yeah. Because she like sent Tommy to jail and took her kids away, right? But then she continues to pick these men that are going to be terrible to her.
Yeah, it seems like, we discuss trauma a lot in this podcast and like what our parents do to us. And it's very clear to me that like her parents really set the story up that's not true, Like it's one of those things where I always talk about the movies that I love to watch, Like I love True Romance, right? Which is this guy and this girl, and he like basically robs banks and like kills people. Like that's not really probably a good relationship to be.
Yeah. When I was like 25, I probably also would have thought like getting married in 4 days was like super fucking romantic. Now I'm like,
you're like, even marriage, no.
Well, I'm just like, I don't know. We'll see. Maybe I'll go out with you one more time a week from now. Like 4 days,
Yeah.
I mean, it's wild. But that I think is the shit that women have been taught this whole time, right? Like it seems clear to me that Pam understands that men have all the power.
Yeah. I think that that's true. I think she was hoping that her sexuality would help her grab some of that power. But it leaves her like completely broke. And like, she talks about, Hugh Hefner. She never made money from him. You know, she was married with Tommy, and he like never really gave her any money. And at some point, her sons are talking about the fact that she was always like worried about who's going to have money and when they were going to have it. And she says something along the lines of like, I would use my credit cards, and then I'd be like, what? Well, I hope it works. I just want my credit cards to work, and so I can get my nails done. And I was like, girl, it's only $40. Get your nails done.
Well, and the boys are like, you know, she's in this whole thing. She's taking care of her parents, and like her parents, of course, are still together, which I think she thinks is very romantic.
Yes.
I mean, she says, she's like, they're really happy now. I'm like, so the 50 years of fucking chaos beforehand, like, you know, and why are they happy now? Did your dad just give up? Like his spirit was finally broken?
That's what
like,
I was
what
thinking.
What the fuck? You know? Oof.
I mean, but how do you deny a story? Like, I think in her head, it's like, how do you deny this partnership that has stayed together through thick and thin, through good and bad?
I'd like to see Pamela's brother on this documentary and like ask him if his experience was the same.
Yeah, I don't know much about Pamela's brother, actually.
No, I'm just saying, like, she clearly romanticized the situation with her parents like hardcore, right? I also think she has strong Seven vibes. Like, she's up for a party. She says, I wrote it down, like something that was like, I don't overthink things. I don't think about it at all.
Yeah.
You know, I don't overthink anything. Thinking is overrated.
Right. And then you're like, she's definitely a 7.
Well, sort of, yes. I mean, listen, one of my favorite things about like even our creative process is you'll just like throw shit at the wall and like move on. You're like, oh, you know, I love that about you because I cannot do it. Right. Yeah. So like we're just very different in that way.
Well, that brings up the whole point about how you feel about Pamela, basically, what would we call it? Like succeeding by falling. Like she's just like constantly stumbling into success.
This shit is tough for me. Yeah. She like never tries. She's like, I'm at a hockey game and next thing you know, I'm a Labatt's model. Can you believe that? Like I have never walked in anywhere where anything good happened to me because someone noticed me. Like fucking never, you know? Right. And then she's like, oh, then they contacted Labatt's and was like, be on Playboy. And I was like, what? Okay. So then she gets in Playboy and then next thing you know, she's the hottest fucking Playboy chick. And then I didn't even go to my first like 6 auditions for Baywatch because it was like far away. It was far away. I didn't even go. And then when I finally came, they were like, are you the Pamela that never comes to your audition? She's like, yeah. I mean, like, she really just stumbles upward.
Well, even her meeting Tommy, she's like, well, I was at the club and I bought some shots for my friends and they gave one to Tommy and then he was like, I'm yours.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, listen, as an Enneagram 3, my whole vibe is like constant striving and constant trying to like get somewhere, right? And every time I fail, it's mortifying and shameful and I have to start all over again. And like Pam just like exists and like people just give shit to her. Some people are that way though. Some people are that way. They have that vibe that people want to help. But even, I don't even know if her vibe was that people want to help. I mean, I think people saw that she was gorgeous and like they could do something with it and malleable.
I was gonna say, and she's so naive.
Yes,
because I think we talked about this. Is Pamela a dumb person or is she just like incredibly naive? The fact that she holds on to hope after everything she went through is incredible.
Yes,
to have like faith in humanity, and even like her decision to start working with PETA and being like, I'm gonna lead this charge for animal rights. I think even one of her sons said something along the lines of like, my mom wants to fight for people who have no voices and these animals who can't speak for themselves. And I was just like, this kind of hope it's so pretty. I mean, like beautiful. Like I don't know a better word for it. It's like you don't see a lot of people who carry that after they've been through so much.
Yes.
She even says, I'm not a victim. You know, she's like, I made my choices and they weren't great, but also I've lived one of the best lives ever.
Yeah.
And I was like blown away by like, again, how sweet.
Yeah, I mean, her sweetness seems to get her in a lot of trouble, but it also seems to like center her, right? Because I definitely don't feel that hopeful or sweet, like as a person.
Yes.
You know?
Or about love. Like love is like hard. And she's still like, I love my family.
She's literally a person who's like a contractor could walk onto my property at any moment and I could marry him tomorrow. And you know what? I will. And I'm going to have my dream. I mean, like, wow. There's a part of me that's like, that's fucking insane. And then there's the part that's like, well, it is very sweet to be like hopeful that you could still get what you wanted.
Yeah.
But even it sounded like Kid Rock was not mean to her. And actually, they might have had like sort of a stable relationship. And she was the one that was like, this isn't love because like you're not fucking creating chaos. Like, so get to it, kid.
Right. I think that seems to be what she was saying, because she was even saying like he was even good for the boys.
The boys did not like him. There was this like hilarious clip where Brandon's trying to get into a lake and Kid Rock's giving him his hand and he's like, fuck you. No, I can do it on my own. And Kid Rock's like, let me help you, Bob. Bob's like, let me help you. And Brandon's like, don't touch me. I'll get in on my own.
I love that you brought up the contractor walking in to her house and then they end up married, because I know that you've had some work done on your house.
I have not seen any contractors to marry. No. But I also don't think I give out the like, I would marry you, I'm down for a good time vibe. Unfortunately. I mean, I would like to give out a more like, I'm down for a good time. But the truth of the matter is I'm not. Like, I've got a fucking kid to raise. I can't like go home and like fuck strangers because I can't be murdered.
Yes.
So it's just like, that is what it is.
I also think that, Pamela has this kind of a very naive, innocent kind of vibe to her, which makes her a little bit more appealing and in terms of like manipulation and kind of getting her to kind of come to your side. And I don't think you give off that vibe either, where you're just like, come tell me what to do.
No. And I would say though that Brandon, they talked to Brandon a lot more than Dylan.
Yeah.
But Brandon definitely was like, my only father figure was Tommy Lee. Like, he's like, fuck these other people, And as a person whose mother had a lot of relationships and was like in and out of relationships, I thought it was interesting that they're not more annoyed with her about it.
Yeah.
But maybe because she seems to have given it up now. Who knows?
That was hard to watch when she gets like kind of weepy when she sees those videos of her and Tommy, and she's just like, I really loved him.
Well, but like, that she also doesn't see any of it as like pure chaos.
Yeah.
Like, you can tell as a viewer watching their home videos that it's like fucking chaos.
But don't you think if you were a rock star and you were married to this Playboy model, that's the only way it could be?
Sure, yeah. But I'm just saying none of that is like hot to me. I'm like, let's go to the Olive Garden, Maybe we could watch a movie. You could hold my hand. Like,
You're like, Sundays we'll go to Target.
Yeah. Like, I don't know. I don't want to be on a fucking boat. First of all, I don't want to be on a boat that doesn't have a bathroom. Second of all, I don't want to be like marooned out in the ocean with fucking Tommy Lee. No, danger.
Oh my God. With him like slapping his dick onto the fucking steering wheel.
Okay, let's talk about that.
Yes.
Tommy Lee is steering the boat with his dick and
his huge dick.
Oh, I guess someone's seen the tape. Someone here has taken advantage of Pamela.
I'm just saying Tommy Lee is definitely talented.
Listen, I cannot tell you something more unattractive than seeing a man drive a boat with his dick. I would just be like, really? Why is this happening?
I mean, I feel like I would feel that way if it was
Kevin
Costner.
You are fucking
Tommy,
Pamela. You would have been like, yeah, drive the boat with your dick. You're almost 50 years old and you would think it was so great.
I would think it was awesome.
Yes.
I would just be like, why don't you just stay naked all day long?
Yeah, what else can you do with this dick? Can I throw some fucking ring toss?
Yeah, let's do some horseshoes on your dick. I mean, can you stir my coffee, Tommy?
This is the fundamental difference between the two of us, because I would be like, no.
When you see it, maybe you might feel differently.
Listen, I don't. It's not the dick. It's just like the act. Like, it would feel very immature and weird to me. I'd be like, no, this isn't hot. I mean, listen, I've seen dicks.
Of course,
I've seen men do. They're always impressed with what they can do with their dicks.
I mean, but Tommy can back it up.
Yeah. Yes.
That's the cool thing about that.
Yeah. I mean, great.
Yes, and I definitely would be like, Tommy, can you just open the champagne bottle, maybe saber it with your dick? Anyways, final thoughts. What are you feeling about the documentary?
I don't know. I mean, I think one of my main questions is about, like, has it gotten better for women? Like, Pam definitely really like took one for the team in terms of being just like totally. I mean, she's like a lesson for like future media. Like, I don't think we are this terrible to women now in the media.
I think we call them out now. Like back then, no one would call out the behavior of the men. I mean,
right, or say that it was inappropriate.
Yeah. We had the video vixens. We had Howard Stern. We had the Jerry Springers. It's
the fact
wild.
that like all these late night hosts, Jay Leno and everybody, are like Matt Lauer, perfectly like feeling within their rights to like talk to her about her breast implants or talk to her about this sex tape like it's a joke. I mean, like it's very uncomfortable to watch now. But I think, if those things didn't happen, then even the small rights we have as women have made, changes, they also wouldn't have happened.
Yeah. I also like that we get to watch her become a woman in her own right. Like toward the end, she's like, look, if you want me to peddle my tits, I will, but I'm going to say what I need to say, which is something I don't think she felt for a long time. So I didn't think that we could fill a whole like almost hour talking about Pamela, but we did. We're so good. We're so good at our jobs.
I mean, I knew that we could. I would say, like, okay, let me ask you this.
Yes.
If a person is like, I don't have 700 hours to engage with Pam, should they watch Pam and Tommy on Hulu, the series, or this documentary? And why?
That's a tough question because I think we're dealing with two different things.
We are.
I think if you love a shit show, Pam and Tommy.
100%.
Right. There's no question. But I think if you really want to know the truth behind a person's story, hearing it from them is probably the best.
I would agree. I would say, though, that, tell me if I'm wrong, I would say that what she says in the documentary is not that much different than what happens in Pam and Tommy.
Yeah, I mean, yes, she during the documentary, she definitely backs up the storyline that they have on Pam and Tommy. I don't like the mocking.
When do they mock her?
And Pam and Tommy, I feel like they really go in with like, of course they can't help it because of course that's her aesthetic and that her whole career is built on that aesthetic. But I feel like they didn't really spend a lot of time on her feelings until the end of the
once the sex tapes go.
Yeah, and like what's his name? Who's the guy who plays the
Stan?
No, he's great.
Seth Rogen.
Yes, Seth Rogen.
He was great.
Like his kind of comedic role and kind of the mocking of the whole thing that happened to them. That made me a little uncomfortable.
Yeah,
but you're right. All the acting was excellent.
Yeah. Well, and I think, if you want a really clear picture of like how it took off and how sex tapes then took off and the internet, like it was good. So I guess my vote would be Pam and Tommy for entertainment. If you really need a deep dive, hook up the documentary.
Yeah. I guess the other question is like, I wouldn't mind a deep dive into Pamela.
All right. All right. And, it's also probably very unfeminist and unwoke of me to be like, watch Pam and Tommy when she is clearly uncomfortable and doesn't want it.
Yeah.
And she's like, you can watch my actual story that I'll tell you. And I'm like, I don't know. It was a really good show. Anyway.
Yes. So I guess that's the end of our first episode back.
Oh, my God. It's been so long. I'm thrilled to be back. Are you excited?
I'm really, really hyped. As you know, I've had a couple of days where I've just been like dead. And seeing your face right now is like bringing me lots of joy. Talking about my beautiful booby baby, Pam Anderson, is bringing me lots of joy.
Well, good. I'm glad that we, dove into Pam Anderson because literally every time Elizabeth talks about what she wants to look like, it's Pam Anderson.
It's true. I still also follow a lot of plastic surgery messes. One of my favorite ones is Mary Magdalene. You can find her on Instagram at 1-800 Leave Mary Alone. And her whole thing was like being the woman with the biggest vagina ever. And then she's had problems. And just recently one of her boobs popped. And so she's been on Instagram with just a uniboob. And it's been the glorious like makings of my newest obsession, and I'm so thrilled. All right, everyone.
I feel worried.
Thanks for listening to Don't Ruin This For Me. Special thanks to the Lincoln Lodge and producer Christina Ferreira and our graphic designer Jessica Savage.
And hey, are you looking for even more Adrienne and Elizabeth? Check out our Substack newsletters, Where the Fuck's My Happy Ending and Mixed Race Tape. And you can follow the pod on Instagram at Don't Ruin This Pod.
Yes. And please keep listening because this season is jam-packed with everything you love about Don't Ruin This For Me. Diverse guests, 80s and 90s pop culture, rethinking our wacky belief systems, which after this episode, I think you understand a little bit more, and just laughing our asses us off as we do.
We have got a great lineup featuring movies like Fast Times at Ridgemont High, super excited, Fame, Mommy Dearest, Thelma and Louise. Seriously, it's amazing.
And come back next week. I'm so hyped about this. Where Adrian's talking about me and Pamela Anderson. Next week, we are going to find out a little bit more of Legends of the Fall, where we discover and talk about Adrian's sexual awakening.
Yes, I'm a little nervous about it because typically I try not to put the most important things to me in this podcast because I don't actually want them ruined. So... But I feel strongly that Brad's heat is going to be, it's undeniable.
It's
undeniable.
I'm so excited, Adrian, because I don't know the last time I saw it. I may have seen it right when it came out, so I have no idea what I'm going to walk into.
Next thing you know, I'm going to buy a fucking Legends of the Fall poster on eBay. I had one up in my room when I was young. Anyway, don't forget to elevate middle-aged women's voices by rating and reviewing us on your favorite podcast app.
That's it.
We'll see you next week.
Bye.